and send it to me.
No worries. Right, whenever you're ready.
How's it going?
Thank you. Hey, buddy, what's going on? Welcome
What's
to
that?
Grue. Thank you.
It's awesome. What's this little guy that's behind you?
That's actually my symbol, like for the show. It's a monkey with a horror mask and a
Whoa.
chainsaw.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, he's cool. What's his name? Is that
Grue.
that's Gru. That's Gru. Okay.
That's
All
Grue.
right. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
You know.
Grue was like the Grue show. It started out as just a horror show, and then I turned it into more than just horror and interview everybody now. But that's why he was created to look so scary because it was supposed to be horror.
Oh, got it. Okay. Well, hopefully this isn't horror, to talk to me. So well, nice to meet you, man.
Nice meeting you too. Thank you. And I guess the first question I want to start out asking you basically is what inspired you about Ron to make a film on Ron and everything that he's done throughout his life.
Um, I think I was sort of inspired by the kind of history that he comes with, and initially kind of the amazing stories that he could tell you about any number of kind of important musical acts that he's worked with from the 60s sort of on. So everyone from like Hendrix to the Beatles to
Yeah,
like Miles Davis to like Ozzy Osbourne to like The Who or like Nina Simone, it just goes on and on. And so initially I think I was interested in that, um and then that sort of turned in, I thought like individually those stories are all pretty cool, but like maybe collected together may tell a history of live music in through his story.
nice. I know like he's definitely been around for a little bit and the stuff that he's been able to do throughout his whole entire life is just amazing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty remarkable history as far as music's concerned for sure. And Ron was kind of at every, at a kind of, I think a lot of the important concerts in New York were really Ron Delsener Presents. I mean,
Definitely.
it wasn't everything, but it certainly was certainly a lot of them. And it's amazing to think that there was a period of time where if you were a big act or you wanted to break into New York, Ron Delsener and a small team were really the people you kind of had to deal with across the board, no matter who the
Mhm.
act was. So he had dealings with everybody. So it's kind of interesting because it's obviously so different now where it's giant companies.
Oh yeah.
Back then it was really just like just a handful of people, So I thought that was kind of intriguing and yeah, wanted to tell the story, find out more.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like throughout his life, like he did everything from like small dive bars to clubs to sold out tours, arena shows. And why do you think like his shows were so special like that fans like came out in droves?
Well, I'm sure, it probably has to lot to do with the act that he was promoting. But
Sure.
then Patti Smith says something interesting in the film that, if I can remember the line correctly, she said, I don't know what he did. It's like he sprayed the air with something. Um, and I think she means like he just brought a certain um, charisma or a certain energy to his shows, maybe through his enthusiasm or through the way the energy was backstage, any number of factors. I think that there's a lot that goes into a concert that's way beyond just the musician on the stage
Mhm.
and creating a nice room. And an environment that sort of works. I think it all has to work in concert, no pun intended. Um, and I think that, it's also like it's incredible, like when you think about it, um, these promoters like Ron or Bill Graham, another one, or many of the other guys who were doing this across the country, at the time they were doing it kind of out of pocket, like
Hmm.
a few of them had sort of financial partners who were sort of funding it, but they would, Ron was sort of making money through shows, but then putting money back in. It's really like gambling, It's all his own money. It wasn't like it was someone else sort of funding this
Oh,
operation.
yeah.
It was all him. So like it was a real gamble. And I think that probably takes a certain type of person to do that kind of work. I don't think like everyone would be cut out to be a promoter. So, you have to be a special type of person.
Definitely, definitely. I
Um,
mean, the rock and roll lifestyle is definitely a pretty interesting one. Like,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely. It's, night and day, and you're dealing with musicians and you're dealing with a lot of big personalities, and also the shows back then were like different. Like, the Hells Angels
mm,
might turn up, and you know, like he's told me stories that are just wild. And Ron is always so agitated and has a lot of anxiety, and it's amazing to think that someone who suffers from like anxiety would put himself in situations that are like very anxiety inducing.
right? Exactly.
And he's kind of addicted to I think he's addicted to the adrenaline and he in the film he talks a lot about the action.
Hmm.
I just
Hmm.
love the action, the action. That's what I was in it for, the action. And I think that that's like, it's probably like an athlete, like, playing in a playoff game or something. It's like I'm sure that it's very hard to probably, it's like a drug. You can't get off
Oh,
that,
yeah.
you know?
No, definitely for sure. It's all that adrenaline and everything that circles around it.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
And like for the film, you got like all these like huge names to talk on the film, and I mean it's a who's who of everybody from Bruce Springsteen and John Bon Jovi and Billy Joel Kiss. Like, how did you get like all these like huge legends like to be part of the film?
Well, that was really, reaching out, but I think because it's Ron, and I think Ron suddenly with a couple of those acts, I mean, Billy for sure, Bon Jovi for sure, Kiss for sure, like Ron broke those acts in New York.
Sure.
Yeah. Like he gave them their break. Um, so I think that there's like a debt of gratitude maybe, but I don't know. I think beyond that, I think he's personable in a way and kept a lot of those relationships. And I
Hmm.
think kept in touch with a lot of the acts over the years through thick and thin. Obviously careers are careers and there's ups and downs, but I think Ron is consistent in like staying in touch with people, turning up for people, being at shows, even if they're not his shows, he's just part of it and someone like a fixture backstage, um, who's always there. So I think a lot of acts, that wasn't the hard part about making the film.
Oh wow, really?
No, no. There were other things that were hard. That wasn't hard.
Oh, okay, okay. And like, he had so many of these um amazing things like the Beatles at Forest Hill and David Bowie at Carnegie Hall. Like, is there any iconic moment that Ron created that stands out to you the most?
Oh man, I mean they're all pretty cool. I mean, they're all nuts, you know? They're all like what's funny to me is like at the time it would be like, oh, there's this British guy who kind of dresses like an alien called David Bowie, and you know, like now it's like it makes total sense, you know?
Yeah.
But back then that was in 1972, so Bowie wasn't at the time in the States a big star. I think he'd made a name for himself in the UK.
Hmm.
But here, I think he was very much kind of that was his New York debut.
Oh, okay.
It was at Carnegie Hall, which is like a big deal, which is like so there was a lot of like talk. Aldo Marino, who's another subject in the film, who was, I think, one of the agents involved on Bowie's team, talks about how it was a real gamble to put
Wow.
Bowie at Carnegie Hall because they were like, well, he's not really big enough, and you know. But I think Ron saw something in Bowie that I mean, I think Ron is very attracted to kind of sort of theatrical, like
Mhm.
he loves Kiss. I mean, that's one of his he has a long history with them, but I think but you know predates that is sort of Bowie, and I think you know he has an eye for sort of spectacle and stuff that goes beyond just the guy with a guitar, you know. I think he liked the aspect, to the kind of performative aspect, the costumes and the larger than life figures. You know, Ron grew up in New York in Queens and would go to Madison Square Garden to the circus as a kid. So and he has that kind of I think that's in his blood, that kind of showbiz stuff. So
That,
an act like Bowie would be super exciting, and I'm sure the idea of putting him at Carnegie Hall was very appealing. But at the time, was not like it didn't, you know, make total sense, you know, to
I
other.
mean, could you pick? Sorry, go ahead.
But well, I don't think it made sense to other people. It didn't make sense to Carnegie Hall. He had to convince them.
Wow. I mean, could you picture like actually going up and saying, "Here's this guy, David Bowie. He's not a good draw. He'll never amount to anything in his life, and here he is, a legend."
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, um, that's what I'm saying. It's like it all kind of now in retrospect, it makes total sense. And it's like, oh yeah, David Bowie, Carnegie Hall, and Billy Joel at Carnegie Hall, or you know, Patti Smith at the Palladium. But at the time, they were just young acts who, you know,
Yeah.
Ron kind of helped break or Kiss, you know. Like, oh, some guys put on makeup and they're like they're big in the Midwest, but I'm gonna give them a break here in New York, you know? Like
Nice.
it yeah, it's funny because it kind of now in retrospect you're like, yeah, obviously. But then there, you know, at the time, I don't think it was that. So it took someone like Ron, who was a bit of a gambler, I think to kind of have the imagination or the curiosity or the just to kind of have the guts to like front the money and do it, you know?
Yeah. And is there anything about Ron that you learned just by talking to him and making the film that you didn't know going into making the film?
Um, I mean, he's like a big jazz guy.
Oh, okay.
So that was interesting. He loves jazz and he loves art. He's an art collector. So, um, you know, and Ron is just like they kind of broke the mold with Ron. Like he's a
That,
unique guy. Um, so, you know, I mean, I learned a lot just from like hanging out in his basement and going through all his stuff, you know, because it's interesting. He didn't like, he kept everything. So it's just like
mhm.
but it's not in any kind of order. It's all just it's a mess of stuff. And it's like, you know, I mean, priceless memorabilia, but then sort of mixed in with like, just like tchotchkes that he probably bought on vacation, and like, receipts from just whatever, just stuff. And then, but then you have to like dig under the stuff, and then you find this
Hmm.
like wealth of like incredible archive that like, kind of is what our film is made up of. It's like the photos and then the footage. And we found all these like tapes and old 8 millimeter footage, which was real lucky and surprising because his dad had like an 8 millimeter camera that he was making home videos with in the 40s when Ron was a
Oh,
kid.
wow.
Yeah, so if you watch the film, you see kind of like all this like 8 millimeter footage from that time, and people are like, "Oh, those are cool recreations. You got kids that really look like Ron and his sister." I'm like, "No, no, that's him." So I think that's pretty rare, I think, at that time. I mean, his dad was like like a cosmetic salesman. Um, but obviously like, you know, probably before others was, had an eye for like, oh, I mean, that's pretty early. Ron was born
Oh,
in
yeah.
1946, and there's movies of like baby Ron. Um, and then it right the way through his sort of teens. Um, and then Ron started using a Super 8 camera. So yeah, I don't know. We were very lucky in that respect to have archive like that.
That's really amazing. Like to have that, like that he actually kept it for all those years and it actually still works.
Yeah, well, uh he kept videotapes of old 8 millimeter footage, and we were trying to source the original sorry, the original film reels.
Hmm.
I mean, that was harder, but he had VHS tape. I think at some point in the 80s, everyone thought like, oh, we don't need to keep hold of these film reels anymore. Now we have VHS, you know? It's
That's true.
it's just, yeah. So that's that is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's still great footage. So
Oh yeah, for sure. And like how did when you're making this film, like how do you know like what you want to put in it? Because of course with every film you have to edit and leave out stuff. And for a man who's been around as long as he has, a 60-year music career, like how do you know like what to keep and what not to put in the film?
um that's a good question. I mean, I think like, a lot of these shows there was no archival materials for it all. So like there'd be like an amazing story of like Hendrix playing Philharmonic Hall because, Leonard Bernstein gave him permission to do it. And Ron has this great story. It was on Thanksgiving. It was called An Electronic Thanksgiving. And Ron has this great story, but there's just no archive at all. There's just one grainy photo of Hendrix, and you can't even make it.
Wow.
It could be anywhere, really. So, it's like it was a mixture of like identifying stories where Ron could really tell you a great story about it, but there would also be like a visual accompaniment to the story. And then there were cases where we were like, okay, Ron and the Beatles, like, and him selling off the stuff in the hotel room is too good to like not figure out a way to tell that story. So
Definitely.
we did this animation sequence to kind of help tell that story, you know.
And like he's also responsible for Simon and Garfunkel to actually speak to one another when they weren't speaking and had probably terminated like their band and somehow he actually got them to talk and get on the same page and they wound up having like sold out shows and new albums, and that was all because Ron got them together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was like as I think it definitely, well, Paul said that it definitely started with the show. Well, you're probably right, you know. It definitely like the Central Park concert started off because it got Gordon Davis, the Parks commissioner at the time, was working for Mayor Koch, and they were going into kind of a re-election, and I think his first term had been pretty successful in terms of turning the city around from kind of fiscal bankruptcy. So they were like looking for ways to kind of celebrate like New York. And I think they went to Ron with the idea of doing a big con. He had done concerts in the park. He'd done Elton
Yeah.
John in Central Park. Before that, I think he had done James Taylor. Uh, he had done a few other ones too. Anyway, I'm drawing blank. But he had a history of doing these big free shows in Central Park. And they went to him with the idea, Gordon Davis, the Parks commissioner, with like, I want you to put on Simon and Garfunkel. And Ron was like, well, they broke up. There's no, you know, no, like that's not going to happen. But Gordon Davis was insistent, like, no, 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 you can make it happen, Simon and Garfunkel. So Ron is kind of a master on the telephone. Um, I think, kind of used this game of telephone to kind of make it happen. And he called Paul Simon about a Paul Simon show in Central Park, but kind of knowing where Paul was at, that Paul in some way would want to involve Garfunkel, and that eventually, like, what would unfold would be a Simon and Garfunkel show. But
That's very smart.
he had like the phone game, he had like good Ron has like good like game on the phone of and I think that yeah, so I think that Ron, I mean, I don't think that show would have happened without Ron. Like I think that
Yeah.
um and it did. That reunion show then propelled them to go back on the road. They did a tour after that, like a world tour. And I think they were gonna record an album, but I don't think that worked out. But they did this tour, and so yeah, and in a sense, I think Ron did kind of get Simon and Garfunkel back together. Definitely for the show, and then definitely for the reunion tour that followed. So yeah, I mean, yeah, he's done some pretty big things.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I know we're coming up on time, so the last thing I'm going to ask you is where could fans watch the film and also follow you at?
Well, the fans, the the fans of the film, can or anyone that would like to see the film, whether you know Ron Delsener or the story or not, please go and see the film. It's playing at the Quad Movie Theater in downtown New York on 13th Street, starting on Friday, May 31st, and playing through June 5th. And there's lots of other showtime information that you can find at www.rondelsenerpresentsfilm.com. And it's playing in different theaters around the country across kind of the summer period. Or what are we in? Late
Something
spring,
like that,
summer.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming to a theater near you, hopefully. So please watch the movie.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. It was very nice meeting you and chatting. Thank you.
It was nice to meet you and Grue, you know?
Thank you.
See
I'm
a
sure
puppet?
Gru is happy too.
See a puppet or something?
No, he's just it's something I hired someone to draw him, and he's like a drawing. I could probably make a puppet out of him.
Cool. I like him.